Hey everyone, Tactics here, and in this video I'm going to be going through a bit of a wish list I have for Guardian Druids going into our first major talent rework of the Dragonflight talent system. So for those unaware, Druids haven't really had many updates over the course of the alpha, but now that we're in beta, we've seen in the last couple weeks every single Druid spec except Guardian so far get an update, a significant update to their spec tree, and also the class tree is expected to be updated pretty soon as well. So I'm just going to kind of touch on the couple major points I have on the Guardian tree that I'm hoping to see in a rework. I'm not really going to talk too much about the general tree. Most of my issues with that are kind of the same as what I talked about a couple months back when this first came out. So I don't really have too much to talk about in regards to this tree. So it's going to be generally focused on the Guardian tree itself. I'm also not going to spend too much time really talking about pathing updates, because there's a ton of pathing problems with this tree that was kind of solved in the newer tree. So I'm assuming that's going to be adjusted, right? Like things like thrash being the thrash side of the tree being able to reach incarn, this at the bottom of the tree just generally being not really connected, the moonfire traits not being connected, those kind of things. I'm not really going to talk about or go in depth on any of that pathing stuff. I'm assuming it's going to be updated. But what I am going to talk about again is one major thing I think I want gone, one major thing I want added, and then a couple smaller things. So let's start off with those smaller things that we've got. So first off, big issue quality of life thing. Innervate is not castable in bear form. I think easy fix, slap it onto Ursine Adept, make Innervate castable in bear form. Because right now, like, if you want to cast Innervate as a Guardian Druid, you're popping out of bear form, and if you're tanking anything, you're dead on the ground. So just quality of life thing, make Innervate castable in bear form, just slap it on Ursine Adept. Other things that I've touched on previously falling into the section, Blood Frenzy needs to be way more accessible. My suggestion is to put it on this choice node with Bristling Fur. Where to put Brambles? Well, there's a bunch of other places you could put Brambles. One here, Infected Wounds, I think should either be baseline or rolled into another talent like the Mango rank 2 over here. It's just, as a single point, both where it is and what it does, it's just never going to be picked, ever. So it either needs to be baseline or rolled into something else. The other talent here, Front of the Pack. I think this should be in the general tree. Same kind of deal with Infected Wounds, just based on where it is in the tree and what it does and what you have to give up to get it. It just doesn't make any sense for Guardian Druid to ever spec into this. And so if you ever want this to be picked, it has to be in the general tree, in my opinion. All right, that's the quick stuff out of the way. Now let's talk about, first, the thing I want gone. Berserk. Personally, I am not the biggest fan of Berserk. I think it's a relatively weak 3-minute, maybe the weakest 3-minute CD in the game. I don't think having a tank spec built around 3-minute CDs is good. I don't think it feels great. I think it's really bad in Mythic Plus, especially if you're reliant on a 3-minute CD. And obviously, in the case of this, right, you have to invest kind of 4 points in Berserk with the 2 upgrades and then Incarn itself to make it even a good 3-minute CD. That I'd rather the spec be built around a different button. For example, what I actually think should take the place of Berserk is Rage of the Sleeper. I think Rage of the Sleeper, you insert it up here, you get rid of these Berserk nodes. You can add maybe like a Rage of the Sleeper node that gives it back the 25% damage increase, but I would much rather my spec have this 1.5-minute CD at the center of it than this pretty bad 3-minute CD, right? If you compare it to other 3-minute tank CDs, right, it's like Meta and Ox. Both of those are significantly higher power level, and both of those don't have the entire spec built around them, right? A Brewmaster without Ox is still fine. A Demon Hunter without Meta is still fine. Berserk is just, I dislike the spell a lot. I've been thinking about this a lot, and I don't think that this should be the direction of Guardian Druid moving forward. What I will say is I don't mind Incarn staying, but I think Incarn kind of needs to get the meta treatment that Meta just got. So for those that aren't aware or haven't been keeping up to it, let's go to Demon Hunter real quick. So obviously Meta is, first off, baseline. You don't need to commit a point to get Meta. Then you get a CDR node of meta right there. And then here's what I'm talking about. The choice node right here, I think, is a fantastic blueprint for what they can do for Incarn. So you have a choice between I-Beam or what it's probably going to be Feldev or something, gives you some duration of meta, or meta has another 60-second CDR on it, and you gain stats during meta. So what I'm proposing for Guardian Druid Incarn is you leave Incarn here, and instead of this node at the bottom, which I mean, I don't know if it's ever been implemented really, but it's just not a great node in my opinion and shouldn't be there. You can have a choice node at the bottom here, where it's either a choice of a 1 minute CDR on Incarn and this haste portion, the 15% haste, together, right? So similar to that meta CDR plus verse. Or on the other choice node, you can either do like a Vision of Perfection style proc of Incarn, which I think was like an 8 to 10 second proc of Incarn on your abilities, or if you want that more deterministic approach, which I think is definitely better for tanks in general, choosing when you get those procs like Demon Hunter has, you use our 2-piece. You would need to do a buffed version of our 2-piece, but what that currently is when you bark skin, you get 4 seconds of Incarn. That number would probably need to get bumped up to like 6 to 8 seconds, but having that be the choice versus you get a 2-minute Incarn with haste, I think is a really, really good choice. Makes Incarn feel way, way, way better, right? You don't have to wait the 3 minutes all the time, or you have the 3 minutes long CD and you get procs throughout the rest of the dungeon, right? Or raid or whatever off of your bark skin or just random procs. I think that's a much better way to build that CD. And you just don't need to have Incarn or Berserk rather be a buffer. Like Berserk doesn't need to exist, right? You can have Incarn baseline be Ravage plus Persistence, which is kind of what it is now baseline, right? It's just, it gives you the Frenzied Regen, CDR, the Iron Fur cost reduction, the Mangle Thrash Growl CDR, and again, I don't think it needs to have Maul interaction. You can add this haste onto that additional power node or the choice node beneath it. And it accomplishes a pretty similar goal because frankly, like no one really uses Berserk on its own. It's just bad. And I think that's a pretty good way to still have Incarn, still have Guardian Druids potentially have the option to spec into Incarn, but also have them able to have higher uptime on Incarn and not be reliant on it being just what they have in those in that 3 minute CD window. But that's Berserk, so that's what I want gone. Might be on take. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments of Berserk. But again, I'm proposing to keep Incarn, drop Berserk. But the other thing I want to see is a more fleshed out arcane theme in part of the tree. So I think, honestly, looking at this, obviously pathing, not really talking about it, but great spot to put it would be like this whole area here, especially if you're moving Rage of the Sleeper up to this. I'm not really convinced on either of these nodes, but you could move Guardian of Elune somewhere else. You could put the Soul of the Forest somewhere else. Like I said, Blood Frenzy already proposing to move this up here. And of course, shifting all these arcane nodes over to make this right half of the tree a bit more arcane focused. There's a bunch of traits I think exist that would be beneficial to this kind of thing that are very interesting. And I'm coming from a little place of bias. Arcane Bear in Legion was like one of my favorite iterations of Guardian Druid. It was really, really fun in my opinion. And I think there's a lot of abilities, both old and new, that could be implemented. So big thing is Orbit Breaker. I think it's in the Boomkin tree right now, but it was also a Torghast power where every X number of Moonfire ticks falls down a full moon. Now, those full moons did a ton of damage. So what I'm actually proposing is maybe you make that full moon a little bit different for Guardian Druids compared to Boomkins, right? You can slash its damage by a decent chunk, but make it apply a damage reduction to all targets hit. All of a sudden now full moon is kind of a defensive thing almost, right? You have some defensive value from full moon, which I think would be pretty cool for Guardian Druids to have. Lunar Beam, also an old spell that's been removed now. Maybe like a soft reworked Lunar Beam, right? Somewhere between like a 45-second to a 1 minute CD. Does AoE damage. Obviously we have this node here, so it's going to passively do healing because it's arcane damage, so maybe add some other defensive portion to it, whether that be like an absorb shield or like a magic DR could thematically work for that. I think that would be cool, right? Something you can pop at the beginning of pulls and Mythic Plus or whatever, use as like a magic DR or whatever it is. I think that would be cool to see, just another short CD that Guardian Druids can kind of layer in with things like Barkskin, things like Rage of the Sleeper. Love to see that. Obviously, I think Convoke should be moved off of a choice node within Karn to this arcane area of the tree if it should exist. And also like a power node buffing Convoke off the side of it, just like the Incarn one, maybe making it so that every single Convoke is guaranteed to drop a full moon. And again, obviously that sounds OP if you're using the current full moons, but if you're using the new Guardian full moons that I'm proposing, where it's a nerf to damage wise, but adds that DR portion, all of a sudden Convoke is a pretty reliable defensive CD, right? No matter what form you use it in, bear, boomkin, human form, whatever, you're guaranteed to drop a full moon if you take this talent, and you're guaranteed to know, okay, every time I Convoke, I know I'm going to get this DR on everything. So that could be an interesting node, potentially. Probably you'd have to move Circle of Life and Death either over to this area, because it doesn't really make sense where it is right now, or remove it entirely. I wouldn't be opposed to either. I'm not really sure it makes the most sense in the Guardian tree, but I wouldn't be upset if it was something that you weren't forced to take if you wanted, like Incarn, for example. So if it's like, if this is the shape of the Arcane tree, I wouldn't be mad if like one of these two nodes here was Circle of Life and Death. I just don't think you should be forced to take it, to get to the bottom of the tree in any area. And like I mentioned previously, like things like Survival of the Fittest, things like Soul of the Forest or Guardian of Valoon would need a new home. So moving those over towards the Incarn line, and then moving all these spells over and making this kind of like an arcane line down at the bottom, definitely something that could work. But that's what I think. Those are my thoughts on what I'm looking forward to, or what I'm hoping for going into a Dragonflight talent rework for Guardian Druid. But what are you guys looking for? Let me know it down in the comments below. What do you think of my ideas? Let me know what your ideas are as well. Would love to hear it. As always, you guys can check me out on my Twitch channel at Tactics, where I stream High Mythic Plus, Mythic Rating, and Dragonflight beta stuff. Come drop by, say hi. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I'll be going through all the tank specs in Dragonflight soon. TM, I'm going to give it a couple more weeks before I start doing those, but I am going to be putting out previews of all 6 tank specs, so make sure you keep an eye out for those. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.